Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are going to just wait a few more minutes for everyone to arrive, and then we're going to get started. Okay, let's begin. Welcome, everyone. My name is Victoria Jordan Rodriguez, and I am the Director of Sponsor Relations for the James Beard Foundation. I am so thrilled to welcome you here to the third installment of our Capital One webinar series, Restaurant Resilience. We're so thrilled and so grateful to our partners at Capital One for not only supporting all of our efforts with our awards this year, with our Taste America program, with everything else, but also with this incredible series of webinars where we've been able to explore both financial topics, HR topics, and then today, social media topics, really leveraging some of those professionals to all of you, our restaurant community. So thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who have not joined a webinar before, this is how it works. This webinar will be recorded and archived on jamesbeard.org. So definitely by next week, but maybe in the next couple of days, you'll be able to check this out and share it with anyone who you think might want to listen in. And all of the questions will certainly be answered there, and you'll be able to get all of that recording. We're going to save questions for this webinar until the end as time allows, so please write in your question anytime using the webinar toolbar. That's usually showing up on the right hand of your screen, and you're able to ask those questions, and then we'll be able to answer them as the webinar proceeds, unless we answer them with the actual topic. And then if you're having any technical difficulties, any issues like that at all, please message us using the webinar toolbar, and we can do what we can to troubleshoot. You can also email impact@jamesbeard.org with any other questions about our webinar topics, the work of the foundation, or anything else. Thank you so much for joining us. So our topic today, we are going to explore social media and PR and how you can make an immediate impact using some of these tools. I remember when I was growing up in the 80s, the only time that you ever saw a restaurant as a commercial was a real big national chain. And then all of a sudden, what seems like yesterday, but it's really probably about a decade ago, social media became the place that was not only an option for restaurants and small businesses, it became something that you really had to be doing. And a place that was a very local restaurant, a very local spot, could get a national or even an international following by utilizing some of these tools, which are really exceptional, but can be a little tricky. And if you have the right know-how, the right basis of information, we're really able to leverage the power of social media to really increase your business and to make whatever you're doing, get out there to the people that you want to know about it. So without further ado, we do have a little short agenda to share with you today. We're going to certainly meet our panelists. We're going to go through the basics, crisis communication, and then, like we said, some question and answer at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our first speaker, Bridget Beyer, to introduce herself and to get our webinar started. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Victoria. Hi, it's Bridget Beyer. I am a brand manager at Capital One. Specifically, I lead the social and content strategies for our upmarket card products. So that includes Venture, Saver, and Quicksilver, as well as our digital products, Wikibuy, etc. As far as my background goes, I've worked both client and agency side in marketing. So before coming to Capital One 7 years ago, I was an account manager at the Martin Agency here in Richmond, Virginia. And I supported key clients such as Discover, Norwegian Cruise Line, 1-800-CONTACTS, and a handful of other new business pitches. And being from Richmond, Virginia, born and raised, if I had to choose my last meal on earth, it would definitely be shrimp and grits for sure. Great, I'll pass it over to you, Blair.
Hey everyone, my name is Blair Matthews. I'm a senior brand manager on Capital One's social and content team. And I actually lead the strategies, our social strategies for our sports and entertainment sponsorships, including the James Beard Foundation partnership, which I absolutely love working on, as well as our consumer bank. I've actually been around Capital One long enough to say that I'm one of the founding members of our social media team. I've touched almost every aspect of social, including moderation, paid media, real-time event support, and influencers. My last meal on earth, if I had to choose, would probably be an endless glass of rosé paired with something I didn't have to cook. I think that would just make for a good night. Devin, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Devin Gunn. I'm on the corporate communications team at Capital One, where I lead PR for our Capital One cafes, which you may be familiar with in your city. But my background has actually always been in food and beverage PR, first on the client side, working with a lot of different clients, and then most recently, I led PR for Honest Tea with the Coca-Cola Company. So really excited to, get back to my roots a little bit and talk about how to use PR as a tool to help your food business. And my last meal would definitely be a margarita pizza with a lovely glass of Pinot Noir, nice and simple. So I'm going to kick things off, and before we kind of get into some of the basics of PR, I thought we would talk a little bit about what PR isn't. PR, much like the food and restaurant industry, is one that is often depicted, but often misunderstood and misrepresented. While there are certainly elements of things like TV ads and press releases and party planning in what we do, that's not really the full picture of what PR is. We like to talk about PR as storytelling. It's really that simple, and kind of creating perfectly crafted stories and getting those stories in the hands of people that will ultimately spread them around. And one of the reasons why we like talking about PR as storytelling is it helps you kind of develop that gut instinct for what actually makes something newsworthy, or what you might hear the term PRable. Is one we hear a lot. And I kind of like to think of it this way. When you're seeing something on the news, or whether it's TV or you're reading something, what about that story would make you then go tell it to a friend or tell it to a family member? Sometimes it's because it's funny, it's heartwarming, it's shocking, it's new, or maybe it just connects really personally to you or to that person. So thinking about your pitch or your story that way, the news that you want to share, it's a really good kind of lens to think through, because it will ultimately allow you to build that gut instinct to determine, is it something that is inherently newsworthy and worthy of PR efforts. And using this kind of framework of PR as storytelling is always really important. But I would say now more than ever, it's incredibly crucial, because we are in what must be one of the most cluttered news cycles that has ever existed in history. We've got an election that is very hotly contested. We've got a pandemic. We've got a recession. We have climate disasters. All of this is just wall-to-wall news coverage. So really finding those opportunities to break through is going to be really crucial. But there is good news for our friends in the food industry, because food is such a connective thing, and really everyone kind of resonates with food. And often our reporters that we're talking to, they're looking for this type of content to keep things lighter in what they're talking about. So good news for the type of pitching that you all will be doing. So let's start with some basics. The first thing that I always love to start with is just looking at your business objective. Thinking about, without even thinking about PR, what are you ultimately trying to, achieve this year, this quarter with your business? It might be just getting people in seats. It might be shifting perception. Maybe you have a fine dining establishment and you're trying to pivot to be more of a fast casual model. So you need to change minds of, the people that are coming to your restaurant. Starting with these kind of macro level questions, as it relates back to your actual business objectives, is a really good place to kind of ground yourself, and it will ultimately help determine what PR strategy or approach that you would use. And then once you've kind of started thinking through what those ultimate objectives are, the next step is to think through, okay, who am I trying to reach? And not just the actual people or the communities that you're trying to bring into your business, but where are they actually consuming news? Because if you're trying to reach one audience, but then you're pitching to a news outlet that is, or influencers that are serving a completely different audience, your efforts are not really going to help you achieve your business objectives. And a really nice way to, to actually find out this information is just to talk to the people that are currently, your customers, whether it's a formal survey or just informal, information gathering. Ask them where they're getting their news about food, or where they're getting their news about, new things that are popping up in their community. That's a really easy and cheap way to kind of understand who you should be targeting. So we know trend spotting is very important in food, but it's actually also very important in PR. And really, that's because there's really no better PR story than the first something. So keeping an eye on, what is trendy in your industry, and also just what tools are people using in your industry to get news out there, or to talk to their customers, is a really good thing to kind of do on an ongoing basis, to sort of make sure that you're kind of staying on, ahead of the curve with trends. And then you kind of, once you've sort of worked through your setup here of figuring out, okay, I know what my objectives are. I kind of know who I'm trying to reach. I've kind of developed that gut instinct to say, okay, this is the story I'm trying to tell, my pitch, if you will. The next big step is figuring out who are you telling this to, and that's where relationships come in, which is probably one of the most important, pieces of public relations. No surprise, are relationships. So we're going to spend a little bit of time kind of double clicking on how you can really develop a media list and relationships that will serve you. So I like to think of a really good media list as a guest list at a party. Think of who actually would want to be there, meaning who is actually going to care about this news that I'm serving up. And making sure that you're choosing the right people to ultimately get to that goal. And then, as you're sort of starting to put your media list together, you always want to make sure that your relationships with media are not transactional, meaning I need something from you. This is the first time I'm contacting you. So if you're popping up in a new market, or if there's a new, food outlet that's come online that you're hearing about, do a little bit of research and just reach out to those reporters, and introduce yourself. Let them know who you are, and also just ask them some questions about, what types of information are they looking for? What types of, stories interest them? And even like logistical things like, what is the best way to reach you? Is there a best time of day to pitch you? All of these things will be helpful when you actually do, need something from them, AKA need them to cover you. But it's also just a piece of goodwill that hopefully will go far when they actually see your name pop up in their inbox. And then when you're thinking about your pitch, which really is just a fancy term for an email, there's really no magic there. But we always like to think about keeping it very short and sweet. Reporters, much like folks in the food industry, are incredibly busy. They don't have a lot of time to kind of sift through a lot of upfront. So keeping things short and sweet is always good practice. When I have some sort of event, or a lot of types of pitches that you might be sending out, whether they're tastings or openings, that type of thing, and it's more event based. It's a good sort of format to think of your pitch like those old school birthday invites that you used to get, the who, what, where, when, why type of format, because it's really easy for reporters to digest, and it probably increases the likelihood of some sort of response. Following up is always okay. I think, going back to reporters being busy, follow-ups are often expected. But after, an email or two, if they haven't responded, and it's likely that they may not, it's okay. Don't take it personally. I like to just kind of move on to somebody else at that outlet that could be a good fit, or, an outlet that might be similar. And as you're searching for, the folks that you actually are going to develop these relationships with, keep in mind that you don't have to be a food reporter to report on food. Newsrooms are incredibly, tightened these days. There's a lot of shrinking news staff. So, especially in this kind of weird world that we're living in, where sports are kind of weird and a lot of other beats might not be running in their normal pace. There's a lot of pitching in that happens across news staff. So be flexible. Know that you might be pitching someone that normally covers arts and culture that aren't going on, and now might be doing some food coverage. And a really great way to kind of find out these sort of nuances around your reporters is to follow them on social media. Twitter is a huge platform for reporters. It's often where you kind of get the most information about what people are interested in, what they're writing about. It's also a really great way to pick up some, personal tidbits about them that can sometimes go a long way. If you mention in an email, it kind of shows that they're, you're paying attention to them. So we've covered the basics. Hopefully that was helpful to kind of get you started. But before we move on to our social section, wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about crisis management. These are obviously very unprecedented times, and this is a time that we're dealing with all sorts of crises, whether it's related to safety precautions around, a global health crisis or social justice issues. It is, personally, I can count on a million hands how many crises that I've just had to think through crisis situations just over the past few months. So we thought it would be helpful to just share a few tips when you're thinking about your crisis communications, if that is something that you, find yourself in. So similar to your pitches, really boil it down. You want to make sure that the language that you're using in any crisis communications is straightforward, to the point, doesn't feel like you're obfuscating anything, because that will then start to come off as inauthentic. So keeping things short and sweet are really the best practice here as well. Consistency is very, very key in crisis comms. You may have multiple channels in which you need to communicate these types of messages. So not just to, a reporter who is emailing you asking how you're handling this, but on your website, in signage, even with your staff, talking to them, and then how your staff ultimately talks to your customers. So all of these are different channels, and they all need to have consistent messaging. Or then, if they don't, that's when things start to kind of go haywire a little bit. One thing that we like to do, in our industry, is we keep kind of a master messaging document where it kind of holds all of the core messages, and then you can then kind of spin those off into different channels. But it allows you the ability to make sure that everything's kind of starting from the same place. Always be prepared, just like the Girl Scouts taught us. It's a very important thing to keep in mind as well when you're thinking about crisis comms. And this is particularly when it comes to answering questions that are the tough questions, frankly, that come about a crisis. I like to sort of step out of my shoes and pretend that I'm like the nosiest reporter of all time and anticipate any single question that could be thrown my way, and really put a lot of thought into what those answers would be. It's a really, good way to kind of go into a crisis situation, since they are often very fast and have high stakes. So having those types of responses at the ready will help you sleep better at night for sure. And just remember, when you're, writing these types of communications, you're human. Authenticity is kind of the name of the game these days. People really resonate with it. So your tone should be very much as a human, and be careful not to come across as too corporate or too stilted, because that is when people kind of start to lose interest and it starts to feel inauthentic. If this is a crisis situation that you're responding to, where frankly your business messed up, you didn't do the right thing, or somebody in your business messed up, I always like to err on the side of owning it and then talking about, okay, this is how we're going to move forward and change it. I think that goes a long way, especially with people who are looking for the businesses that they're frequenting to be honest with them. And then the last point here is just to consider all of your audiences. When you're thinking about crisis management, there's a lot of different stakeholders that might be interested in what you have to say. Obviously, your customers are probably number one, but don't forget your other employees or your investors or people in the communities that you're living in. So thinking about how all of those audiences would receive the information that you're putting out there, and also the best channels to reach them. So that sort of wraps up our PR 101 session, and I will pass it over to Blair to kick it off with social.
Thank you, Devin. Hey, everyone. Yes, let's jump into social. So it's been around for a while, and it's kind of surprising to see that number, 10 years, but it has truly grown up over the last decade or so. And while it is still a great marketing vehicle to sort of shout from the rooftops and use as a megaphone, it's also a great place to have direct one-to-one conversations with customers and other people in your industry. So it's really a powerful tool. Let's take a little bit closer look at all of the channels at your disposal. So these are sort of in descending importance in terms of how you can use them. So the first one is Facebook. So this one most people are very familiar with. It's sort of the oldest one of the group, but it's important to keep in mind that on Facebook you're competing with people's college roommate stories or other Facebook groups that they're a part of. So when you're putting content out on Facebook, just remember that it's going to be slotted into their newsfeed in between sort of like personal and very important causes to your customers. Instagram, I mean, I think all of us can say this is the one that is the most beautiful. People love to have curated, beautiful, aspirational images on Instagram, and it's a great place to sort of showcase some of that amazing food photography, or maybe it's of your the neighborhood where your establishment is, or of the beautiful areas that you've set up. But Instagram also allows you to, and we'll do a little bit deeper dive into this, it's got a 24-hour Instagram stories feature now that you can sort of just share what's the latest, what's going on. But again, it's sort of where people go to sort of be wowed. LinkedIn is an interesting one because maybe it's not where you're putting your marketing, but it's a great tool to connect to other like-minded individuals. People are putting up statuses to click on, thought-provoking articles, and maybe it's just somewhere you want to be established and have a professional profile so that you can find, again, other people in the food industry that you want to get connected with. Pinterest. You don't even necessarily need to have a Pinterest page, but I do recommend checking out Pinterest if it's just to get inspired. Beautiful images, really cool and interesting ways to just get inspired. Again, you don't necessarily need to be on the platform, but I love that it's there for you to get inspired. And the same goes with Snapchat. I'll say the Capital One only uses Snapchat as an advertising platform. We don't have a daily snap at all on the platform. It's an interesting one to check out. It does trend a little bit lower. The data does show that 35 plus is getting a little bit more active on the platform, but it does attract a younger audience. Devin talked about the powerful engine that is Twitter. This is where people come to consume a lot of information in a quick amount of time. We read recently that tweets have a lifespan of 18 minutes. So, I mean, that timeline is getting updated all the time. I think Twitter would be a great place for the food industry to put real-time information about what's going on in your establishment or your restaurant. Again, it doesn't even always have to be accompanied by a creative, like an image or a video. Just put out there some information about your restaurant or what's going on so that people can find it quickly. And finally, YouTube. It's at its heart a search engine. If you are someone who's maybe good with a how-to tutorial, or you want to show a quick spin around your outdoor dining opportunities or how people can safely pick up things in the pandemic, go for it. But I think all of these channels also have video editing and capturing capabilities. So I wouldn't let the YouTubes of the world scare you, because everyone can be a curator pretty much on all of these channels. Next slide. Awesome. So what exactly should you be using social to tell your audience? And the key here is you don't want to be too self-serving. What you want to do is find the sweet spot about what you and your organization and your brand stand for, and what your audience needs and is interested and passionate about. That's going to be where you get there and capture their attention. I think especially in these times, it's going to be important to use your social platforms as a way to just let people know you're here, you're there. This is how they can reach out to you, and these are some of the safe ways they can interact with your business. And next, we wanted to get into some of these best practices that are truly and honestly free. So these are some of the best ways we see as getting, your brand some presence in what Devin rightfully called a very cluttered space right now. So be engaging. So what is that? What do we mean by that? So really, it's establishing your social presence, making sure you stand for what you believe in, and staying true to your word. You can diversify the types of content you put out there. It can be some longer form content, videos, quotes, etc. But make sure you're giving value to your audience and not just acting as a sales pitch. This should really be content that you think your audience needs and wants to read and engage with. Be a part of the community. Bridget's going to go into this in a little bit more detail in the next few slides, but get out there and talk to the people who are talking about your establishment. Feel free to engage on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Answer their questions. Like other restaurants or food places in your neighborhood, get active on your local groups on Facebook. It's where people are going to ask questions. Who's got the best takeout, or who's up and running right now? Who needs love right now? Get out there and be active, because people are on these engines 24/7. And finally, be visible. So if you can, we would recommend having a presence on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter if you feel comfortable, just so that when people search for your brand, they'll find you. Have a regular cadence of posts. Again, this doesn't have to be a long-winded post by any means. It can just be that week's specials, or how you're being a good community member, or how people can find out more information by calling your establishment or going to your website. Make sure you include locations, hours, if you're leveraging a hashtag, either for yourself or again as part of your community or what you stand for. Make sure you're leveraging those hashtags and tag locations. And finally, again, just making sure that you're just being part of the regular and relevant conversations that make sense for your brand.
Great.
Blair, if I can interrupt for just a moment. I'm so sorry. There was actually one question about that particular section, Bridget, if we could just define what self-serving posts are, as opposed to what that kind of content people are looking at or looking for. I mean, I think that like a picture of a big juicy cheeseburger that's your special this week could be a really enticing content, but if you're encouraging people to come in and purchase that, is that the self-serving content? Is that what people want? Like, how would you all define that?
That's a great question. I think if you're putting yourself out there and saying, here's what we have to offer, here's our special of the week, I think that is providing your audience with value. What I think would come across as self-serving is if you're using your brand's page as something maybe that's just targeted at yourself. Maybe you're using it as its megaphone for just yourself, versus a way for your customers to find out how to support you. If you're a local establishment, I think people are just craving ways to show the love for local businesses right now, or even any restaurant that is out there and providing safe ways for people to support them. I think that is completely on the table. I truly think that's probably the right thing to do, is show them what's out there. I think if I can think of another good self-serving no, I'll follow up with you guys.
Thank you.
Great. So taking a deeper dive into the type of content that you can feature on your pages, maybe this will even help answer that question a little bit more too. So it's really a feast for the eyes. Your whole goal here is to engage people and get them excited about your business and your product. So a couple things to keep in mind as far as building out your social presence and what to feature on the platforms. So the fact of the matter is that people use social now almost in lieu of, or sometimes in complement of, websites. So frankly, it's oftentimes where people go first. And if you look up through search engines, sometimes it's even the first link that'll pop up when people search your name, etc. So a couple key things to really make sure you have on your social presence. Build your business profile. So adding things like hours, links to menu, links to ordering online services, delivery, curbside, all that stuff that you're offering right now, I'm sure. Cuisine type, any general business information that almost like you would have in an About Us section on a website. Included here, so it's with, or it's at people's fingertips. Also encourage your chef owners to tag the business in their personal profile. It helps people connect to, and just cast a wider audience for your social space more. Make it easy for customers. So there are really great features within the social platforms that help keep the most relevant information pinned and at the top of all of these social pages. So for instance, Instagram story highlights are these little bubbles that pop up on your profile that you can pin important information like those popular menu items or hours or events and pop-ups information, and it's always at the top. So you can put information there that you want people to see and have easy access to. Show off your menu. Think of it as plating, but digitally. Channel your inner food stylist. Look at it, well-lit surfaces, well set scenic backgrounds. You know, you've worked really hard to make and build this beautiful ambiance in your establishments. Bring that online. Help people experience it, even if they're not there yet. Don't forget to share dish names and things like that. It gives people great fodder and information to ask for specific items or ask for more information when they do decide to visit. Feature your fans. It's a great way, like Blair said, to connect to the community and just cast that wider net. People love to share food. They love to share images of what they eat, of what they make, of what they want to eat, of events or special celebrations they've had with people, and food is often at the center of it. So you'll see in your story mentions or tagged photos where people may have tagged your business in their content. Share it. There's no better way of showing others how excited the community is about your business than showing others that feel that way. And tag it up. Tag your vendors, tag your chefs, tag notable guests, etc. Like I said, it just helps increase that wide net, so you're reaching not only your direct audience, but theirs as well. And they'll do the same. So it really just helps give you constant content that's coming into your feed that you can just get a little bit more legs out of. And stay top of mind. I know Blair mentioned this as well, but posting consistently, we recommend around 2 times a week or more. It just helps bring awareness to any news and updates, keeps you fresh in people's feeds, and make sure that people are constantly seeing your engagement. Great. So as far as an engagement strategy, totally scalable, and it can be adjusted based on current events or your offerings. And this is how you engage with people on your social channels. So there's a range in how you may want to choose to do that. There's passive, so that's things like just liking an image if somebody tags you, or liking some other establishments in your area, things like that. It can be a little bit more interactive. It can be replying to someone. So if someone were to tag you in a post saying, I had a great meal here, you can reply with a thank you, or so glad you made us a part of your special day, or include things like GIFs, emojis, etc. It's actually a fun way. We do it at Capital One a lot. You don't have to worry and harbor over the words you're choosing, but it actually shows a ton into your personality and sense of humor if you reply with a funny GIF or emoji. People love it. Conversational. You can respond with open questions like, oh, so glad you came to visit. What was your favorite dessert item? Or things of that nature to keep the conversation going and show your audience that you're really engaged. Or even more visible options like if people were to tweet about you on Twitter, you can retweet that, or you can quote tweet, what essentially lets you able to put the tweet into context and share on your own platforms, or polls or things of that nature that just get the conversation going with your audience. A couple general rules to keep in mind is just respond to some of them comments, the good and the bad. I know that's not always easy to do, but it shows people that you're authentic and you're committed to changing things and addressing them head on. So I will say you do not have to respond to every single one. Absolutely not. But ongoing engagement does help your audience feel involved and just shows that you're active and engaging. But don't be afraid to thoughtfully ignore the comments that are very off-brand or off-color or don't add any value. You absolutely, if anything is offensive, instills hate, or just feels overall inappropriate to have connected to you, your brand, your presence, do feel empowered to remove it if needed. I wouldn't necessarily do that if it wasn't, the perfect 5-star glowing review that you could easily respond to and kind of help change the conversation a little bit. But if it really does feel off-brand or disconnected, do know that you're empowered to remove that if you'd like. Great, so those are all completely free things that you can do. We should mention though that paid media and investing in social media is very important. It's becoming more and more important. So from an organic standpoint and all of the tactics and ways that we've walked you through up to this point, the fact of the matter is less than 5% of current followers will see organic posts. The Facebook and Instagram algorithms do a very good job of getting content in front of people that is like the content they engage with. So it's difficult without paid media to get in front of the audience that you want to speak to. It's an estimated that 30% increase, we will see it in social media year over year. People continue to invest more and more and more in social. And so you're really vying for attention and getting in front of the audience that you want to get in front of. Essentially, the goal with paid media is it helps you target and get into the feeds of the audience that you're trying to reach. It gives you more opportunities to connect to the right people, connect the right messages to the right people, and just ensures that your message is getting seen. And targeting for paid media has become very, very sophisticated. So you can target based on demographic, based on geographic location, based on interests. You can get as specific as you'd like to and really, really tailor the audience that you're working to reach. Next slide. Great. So if you really want to consider paid media and working to amplify your content, getting it in front of your audiences, some great places to start are Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Facebook and Instagram, how you can do this is you can essentially buy media that's organized based on the results that you're trying to achieve. So if you're just trying to get your name out there, if you're trying to help people be aware of your business, you can buy ads that work to that goal. If you have some well-established awareness in your area, or you have some great brand recognition already, your goal might be bookings. So you can buy media to help you get to those results. If you essentially wanted someone to click on your ad to then book a reservation, you can plan your media to hopefully aim for those results. The metrics do vary greatly across industries, but on average, Facebook has a cost per click of 28 cents. So think of it as casting a very wide net, but if it leads to some great business results for you, it can be minimal investment, depending on how you choose to buy. So to get started, there's a boost post button within your page next to the content that you want to promote. It's a great way just to kind of thumb through and start to look at what that could look like. As far as Twitter is concerned, it's pretty similarly set up. You can set your campaign objectives based on what you're trying to accomplish, and then the Twitter system optimizes that content based on your objective and spend level. You can go to ads.twitter.com to explore more there, but it's relatively the same idea. A couple things to keep in mind if you're thinking about investing in paid further is similar to what Devin said, have an objective. start with your objective on what you're trying to accomplish. Are you just trying to get more foot traffic? Are you trying to, get more bottom line ROI? What are you trying to accomplish? Determine what that is, buy accordingly. And then know your measures of success along the way. So if you're just trying to get your name out there, casting a wide net and reaching views is a great metric. So just keep in mind what your level of success looks like and optimize towards it. And take a look at the content that you're producing on a regular basis and see how it does. If you ran content in August and you saw a ton of engagement and additional foot traffic in September, that's a win. So start to look at what type of content brought great results for you. Start to keep in mind, track those results, and you can duplicate it more in the future. Great. So again, if you're thinking about investing further into social, let's say you have really big aspirations, you can also hire people. Social does take time. It takes investment to get the resources to help. There's a lot of things that you can be doing just on your phone on an ongoing basis and organic. But if you really want to get a strong paid media plan together, there are some additional resources that you can do to help that. So on the left here, you'll see some overall content creation and creative resources options. And then on the right, there's overall social media management, paid media, and publishing. The dollar signs obviously are how more expensive these resources tend to be, but you can get scrappy too. If you're in a college town, interns are free. They get lots of experience and you get to go on a resume, and maybe they'll share it with their friends. So there's definitely some free options. Or if you're really committed and you've kind of dabbled in it yourself already and want to take it to the next level, you can hire local photographers, videographers, freelance graphic designers, and art directors to help you build that amazingly curated content. And then similarly, you can hire freelance social media managers or paid media strategists to help you really outline and plan your media buying strategies and budgets. So totally up to you if you want to keep it a little bit more of a hobby or a side of desk kind of work line, or if you want to expand your team and build further, the options are endless. But definitely start small and just start to play.
That's great. Thank you so much, Bridget. So we did have a few questions that came in about some various parts of our presentation today. One of the things, and this was in a few different questions, but what about, I think that all of these suggestions are going to boost followers. And I think you're right, Bridget, that it takes time, it takes dedication to finding your voice. Some of my favorite restaurant Instagram accounts have a very particular voice. They are, funny, or they're irreverent, or they really talk up a particular part of their menu that they know people really like. It's like our fresh pasta today, or this special burger, or whatever that might be. But what about boosting? What about buying followers or likes for likes? Or, we all get those DMs now and then, and I'm sure businesses do even more. Like, what do you think about that? Should people go down that route? You're shaking your heads now.
Oops, sorry, it wasn't me. Go ahead, Blair.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would strongly caution against buying followers. Truly, you want the people who follow your page to be interested in your business, and buying followers these days is usually buying bots, and that just, that wouldn't do nothing in the long run. Maybe it would boost you from, a couple hundred to a couple thousand followers, but I wouldn't go that route. I would focus on making yourself feel as authentic as possible. I don't think buying followers is probably an authentic thing to do, but continue to put interesting content out there that you think would resonate with customers or people who you would like to bring into your establishment, versus going out and sort of buying people. Save your money. Go hire one of the interns that Bridget was talking about.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And, one of the other questions, and I think this is especially of the time as well, but, what do you think about a restaurant taking a stand politically or on a certain social justice movement, or coming on one side or the other? I think in my gut, you probably want to stay neutral because you don't want to alienate any of your customers. But this is a very particularly charged time. And I think that there's a lot of customers that are looking for their local coffee shop or their restaurant or wherever that might be to, to take a stand and to show that they stand for something. What do you think about that in this climate?
I can start with this one. I think, I think if you had asked somebody in my field this question 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, I probably would be a different answer. I think, the millennial audience, which we know has increasing buying power and will for many years to come. We have a different expectation from the brands that we're buying from. You've all probably heard the term "vote with your dollar." So actually seeing a brand take a stand is actually something that a lot of customers and consumers are looking for. And often, if you aren't saying anything, that actually can send a message in and of itself. So it's risky. You have to know that it's risky. You might alienate people. But I think the first question to ask yourself if you're having this quandary is, who are my customers, right? If and with restaurants, it's often a customer base that you know intimately. If you know that the majority of these people kind of fall on this side of an issue, then and you yourself want to kind of make that stand as well, go for it, and know that you might end up losing some customers as part of it. But I do think that it is becoming important for brands to take a stance and really just have a point of view on things that they may not have had before.
I think that's an excellent point. So one question, there's actually two other questions that I think would be great for us to talk about. One is, how much posting do you think is too much? You suggested at least 2 per week, and I think that that's great. And I think that that's great if that cadence is like every Monday and Thursday, because that's when your menu changes or when you have a particular special. People get used to that. You look for that. I certainly look for the new menu for certain restaurants in my neighborhood because I'm excited. I want to go do that pickup, or I want to see what their special cocktail is. Do you think that people feel spammed by Instagram stories, that they don't want to see restaurants posting all the time? Do you think there's too much?
I'll take that. I don't think necessarily. I think, first of all, I think you'll need to know your audience and know your clientele to a certain degree. I think the key is keep in mind, if you're providing value and content that people want to see, it's not too much. So I think if you're providing differentiated value, differentiated content that doesn't feel repetitive, doesn't feel like the same thing all the time, start to watch, start to keep an eye on your results on things like, are people liking it? Are they retweeting it? Are they resharing it? That'll give you an idea on what content is doing well. And then you can at least pivot to those themes and help you invest more in those areas. But I would start with a regular cadence, like we were saying, of a couple of times a week if you can, and then bump it up. If people want more, give them more. They'll tell you.
And to build on Bridget's points, Victoria, you mentioned specifically Instagram stories. Our best practice on that channel is 3 to 5 chapters in an Instagram story. So if you have too many of those teeny white bars at the top, people might automatically just turn to the next Instagram story. But 3 to 5 tends to be the sweet spot for people looking for content on that channel.
Great. So another question, and this is, I think, really very much of the time. If you could distill this into the top 3 things that you think are the most important for a business to be able to get themselves out there. A lot of the folks that are on our call today, they don't have a social media manager. There's not someone doing PR in their restaurant. There's not an option to hire an outside company to take care of that, as incredible as those resources undoubtedly are. Do you think that there are a top 3 things that you think are important for a restaurant these days, or top 4 things that you think that, if you do these things, like this is a great base to get people knowing about you?
I think from a PR standpoint, and this is going to sound super simple, but just sharing how you're open, right? Are you open for takeout? Are you open for, I know the rules are incredibly different where you find yourself in this country, but giving your potential customers, and if we're talking about PR media, the understanding of how you're operating is really important. I know I live in Washington, D.C., and I remember, a lot of our local outlets here have just been doing roundups of, here's the list of all the restaurants that are doing takeout, or here's a list of all the restaurants that are doing outdoor dining. So making sure that that information is top of mind and in the hands of the right people, I think is really important. And then coupled with that is, and I think through social is a great way to do this, is show people, right? So we're all dealing in this very unknown world right now, and being able to take a picture of what your outdoor seating looks like might give people the peace of mind to come in, or your indoor seating, so that they know that there's, socially distant. So really, the basics are kind of what's most important. And then I would also say, from a more of a kind of emotional standpoint, is how are you supporting your employees and the communities that you're in right now? This is a difficult time that we're in, and we've seen all sorts of pledges and commitments from different businesses. So making sure people are aware of that piece of it, I think will also draw people in.
Those are amazing points. The only thing I would add from the social media side of things is, and this also ladders back a little bit earlier to not appearing too self-serving, is get involved. And that can be just, again, engagement, showing people you're there, you're open, you're listening. I think that'll show people like, hey, this place really gets me, gets our community, is something I want to support locally, what have you. I think that would be a great way, in addition to all the great points that Devin just made.
Great. So a couple of other questions have come in. A few of them are regarding influencers, comps, media comps for writers. Certainly the James Beard Foundation is approached by folks who are looking to come to our events for free and cover it for their paper or their blog. Influencers are rampant, and sometimes influencers have 10,000 followers, sometimes they have 1 million followers. So clearly there's some difference. Do you have any best practices or advice for restaurants that are kind of dealing with that? And I think even how to say no to some of those requests in a graceful way would be great advice.
Yeah, and there's a lot of gray area in this one, but I would say from a media, if we're talking, traditional reporters, I always think comps is kind of expected. I think it is sort of how it's always been. And I know, that can mean different things depending on what type of restaurant you are, but it's very important for those folks to get into the door. I think influencers is where you start to get a little bit of gray area, because to your point, everyone can say that they're an influencer, with their hundreds of followers, if they make themselves public. So obviously paying attention to followers, paying attention to the engagement on the page, seeing if there are people that have bought their followers and, have a lot of spam and bots on their page might kind of, push you in the direction of maybe politely declining that one. But I would say beyond just the reach, like really looking at, are these people, like, are these influencers, maybe they're a micro influencer and don't have a ton of followers, but maybe they're reaching exactly the type of people that I'm looking to get into my restaurant, and the engagement on their posts is high, and you can see that they almost have a community that they've developed. Just because they don't have massive numbers doesn't mean that they're not the right choice there. So it's a little bit of an art, not a science on that one. And then as far as as declining or trying to sort of negotiate with them, I think there's always ways to, if you're not comfortable or not in a position to fully comp a meal, maybe you're just comping an appetizer or comping a cocktail or something that brings them in the door, and then they're still able to have the full experience without you feeling like you're breaking the bank, because obviously they do fill a seat that you need to be filled by a paying customer. So there's certainly some options there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's always a tricky situation. And I think now more than ever, if there is an influencer an influencer or a real influencer who's, going to a restaurant in these particular times, they should certainly know that they need to offer just as much as they're receiving, because this is not a time when people are giving things away for free. So certainly the option is they're always there to say no. So, there's a couple of very specific social media questions, and I think, maybe these were answered a bit in the discussion already, but these two questions, and I think they might even be related. What if no more than 10 people interact with your post? So we're talking about, someone who's putting their information out there, but it's still getting some low engagement. And are there specific times of day that are good to post, which I think would certainly boost engagement? If you post after your dinner, you might not get a whole lot of folks until the next morning when everybody's looking at Instagram again. So do you have any advice there on how to kind of boost that presence, and does timing have anything to do with that?
We have found that there are certain days of the week that perform better. Typically, it's actually during the work week, and you might want to think about doing it while people are getting ready to plan their weekends. Thursdays tend to be a good day. But honestly, it's a 24/7 news cycle now. So I would think about what's important. Like what would be great about getting people into your restaurant? If there are days that you're closed, maybe you don't want to be posting on those days. Maybe you want to time things for when you're open and you want to put people in the door, or get ready for them to come swing by and get takeout. I would really, you might, and as Bridget mentioned earlier, you might need to do a little bit of test and see for your own brand's page, because your followers actually might all be night owls. So they might actually like seeing things later at night. And that's very different than maybe another restaurant's page. The other thing I would say is I wouldn't worry about only having 10 likes on a post, because that might only be for a little bit. And then as you are posting more content that people want to see, you could see those numbers go up. I would not let those numbers discourage you in the little list at all.
Great. So we have come to the end of our time together today. We did manage to get through really all of the questions. I think there was a few that I believe were answered in that program. However, anybody that has any additional questions, anything else that people would like to talk about, please email us at impact@jamesbeard.org. My colleagues and I will do everything we can to try to direct that question for you. To our panelists today, Bridget, Blair, and Devin, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your knowledge. It's absolutely indispensable in these times to have this kind of access to the years and years of experience that you all bring to the table. And of course, a special thanks to our friends at Capital One for making this webinar possible, this entire webinar series possible, and really the James Beard Foundation possible. So we really appreciate all of you. Thanks to everyone who tuned in today. Please look for the archive of this webinar and all of our webinars, and we will see you back here for our next event very soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.